I am a youth worker in Liverpool for the past 28 years. I specialise in youth violence, weapons and gang culture, but I've done everything in between regarding youth work. I currently work in Old Day Hospital where I have been for the past 2 years. So basically what we do in there, any young person coming in who have been a victim or a perpetrator of violence, we pick them up and we put a multi-partner service around them. And we've had great success in the last 2 years. We've worked, it's sad the numbers we've worked at, we've had 157 young people come through the doors in the past 12 months, all victims of violence, knife crime and weapons and stuff like that. But what the real success we've had, a lot of these young people were repeat offending, kept on coming back into the hospital with different sorts of things, broken knuckles and stuff. So since our service has been in there, we haven't had one young person come back into the hospital. My life before that, I was a victim of knife crime myself. I've been stabbed multiple times and I was into that gang culture and stuff. So it was that drove me into youth work, and that was my passion for youth work. I also own a boxing club, opened a boxing club as well to help young people. I help them with their fitness, their mental health, lots of other stuff to go around, lots of other issues that young people face. I really enjoy my job. I'm one of them people who's addicted to work. I get up, I work about 17 hours a day because I just love what I do. It's a great job.
So Alan, we would like to ask you something about your work as youth workers, and in particular your work in mental health sector, because as you know, our project YouProMe, Youth Workers Promoting Mental Health, connect these two main themes of youth work and mental health. And for some of us, it's a challenge because in some of our countries, this professional figure is not so defined. And we are very happy to join you here today because UK is one of our countries where this profile is more defined. And so we would, it's a very interesting opportunity to have you here today, and we really thank you. And how did you come to be a youth worker?
It was my past life. I was being a victim of violence, and I was a perpetrator of violence, and I was going to prison for a long time, and a youth worker kept on intervening in my life, kept on doing like anger management, dealing with emotions and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, looking back on it now, it was most probably the first time somebody has looked into my own mental health and realised that the damage I was doing to myself, the traumas I was facing and the traumas I was inflicting on myself. But the youth worker I had at the time, he was most probably one of the most forward-thinking youth workers of my generation. He was thinking down the line, he was thinking way into the future, what it was going to be like for me. I was like age 12, 13. He was thinking what life was going to be like for me at the age of 21, 22, 23. And he was also working on me, if I went to prison, the trauma that I was going to face with going to prison and the trauma that leaves you with the mental scars and stuff like that. So I was asked politely to leave school at 14. I worked with a youth worker, then I was going into youth clubs and working with youth workers. I was just being a handyman in the Old Swan Youth Club where I used to go to. But I was doing more with the junior kids than the kids in the youth club. I was talking to them about what I was doing wrong and stuff like that. So it ignited a passion, but I never really got into it properly till I was about 23. I'm severely dyslexic, and I've got a lot of other educational needs. And I was told that I'd never amount to anything by my school. I was told that I'd go to prison and stuff. And it was my wife believed in me. I met a lady and I married her after a month. And she was completely different from me. She knew nothing about my life or nothing like that. And she inspired me to go on and achieve. She said, I can do it. I always wanted to be a youth worker, but you needed to be qualified to do youth work. And she inspired me to go on and get the qualifications and inspired me to go on and do what I've done now. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys if it wasn't for this woman. I've been married to her now 25 years later. She's still a driving force behind me. She's still the one who gets into my brain and tells me I can do it. And she's the one who gets me up every morning and says, go and do it, go and change lives. So it was it was my past life that got me into youth work.
So you think that your experience it's an add value for your work?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I can blame anyone else. I can blame everyone for the way I was, but there's only one person to blame, and that was me. As I got older, I understood what was happening to me, and I understood what I was actually doing. I can only blame myself. I can blame the teachers for the way they treated me. I can blame the teachers for saying that I'd go to prison and never put the time and effort into me. But that's about as far back as I can go. We can't carry on blaming. I can't sit there and be a victim. If I wear the victim t-shirt, I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't be able to move on with my life, because it's a lot easier to blame somebody else than to sit back and reflect and look at your own actions and say, do you know what, I need to take responsibility for what I've done. And that was the biggest change in me, most probably, was me sitting down and reflecting on my life and saying, you know what, I've done some stupid things, I've done some dangerous things, but this is who I am now. And I honestly believe, without sounding a bit stupid and a bit phony and whatever else, I honestly believe I went through what I went through to be who I am now and to do the job I'm doing now.
I have a question. You said that one of the most important things that you was to project you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. You said that the youth worker that was working with you when you were a child was projecting you in the future. Yeah. So she was helping you to see how would you become in 2021.
Yeah.
Important work should develop. So this is a procedure somehow to follow.
And youth workers don't realise that the power they have over a young person. I do talks, I go around doing talks to the youth workers. And in one hand, we have the power to take this young person on a magic journey and change their life forever. But in the other hand as well, with the wrong advice, we have the power to destroy that young person. I was very lucky and fortunate in my life that the youth worker I had was brilliant. But I think youth worker now, I don't know what it's like in your countries, but in England, we have our youth work really doesn't start until age 13 upwards. Now, we can't engage in a young person's life at age 13 up and think we can undo all that's happened in that young person's life previously. So I think youth work has got to start earlier. We've got to start age. And what I'm seeing now working in the hospital, age 5 upwards, they need that intervention then from a youth worker or a community worker or a real positive adult in that young person's life. It's all, I never ever thought youth work could coincide with mental health as much as I've seen it over the last 2 years. Though we don't do it, though we mightn't be mental health workers, every single day we're doing stuff with young people will impact their mental health one way or the other, either positive or negative. So it's I've seen it entwined so much over the last 2 years since I've been working in the hospital, and I think everyone should have a little bit of training. What we've done now in Liverpool, we are training many people to be mental health first aid workers. So they're the first people that they'll come across. Last year, we trained nearly all our police force as well to become first aid mental health workers, because they're first on the scene. So usually now, regarding when the police and stuff, when anyone gets in trouble now in Liverpool, they call for the youth workers most to be the first person that they'll call for. And the youth worker then is engaged with that young person for more or less for as long as it's going to take. We're undervalued and overworked. I think the stuff that we do is life-changing for young people. The amount of young people I've spoke to who says the impact the youth workers had on their life is brilliant. It's absolutely amazing. The numbers, especially in this city, our city in Liverpool, the youth workers, they're so valued, it's unbelievable. They do so much work with the young people in our city.
Alan, how old are people, young people you work with, and what are the main challenges that they face now?
Where I work now is age 5. They're the youngest we work with. So they're young, age 5, because of the field I'm in the violence and the youth violence field. So age 5, they're gang members, they're into weapons, they're hiding drugs, they're taking drugs across the city, across to other cities and stuff like that. So what was the second part of the question, sorry?
What are the challenges that they face more in mental health?
The challenge is the backlog of mental health services we've got, because it's one of them things. If I go and engage with a young person and I take them away from that lifestyle, somewhere along the line it's going to traumatize them. They're in a lifestyle. Me and you don't agree with that lifestyle, but they're in a lifestyle that they understand. It's a lifestyle that they've chosen, some of them, that they've come away from parents that are abusive, parents who are chronic drug users or alcohol users. They're out of school. So they find these gangs and they become their family. So I'm coming along then, or somebody else coming along and removing that young person from that gang. So it's like removing a child from his family. You're traumatizing the young person. Our biggest barrier is trying to find mental health service. We or mental health workers who deal with violence. I get a lot of phone calls every week. Have you ever heard of CAMS? It's our mental health service across the country in Liverpool, in England, and in Liverpool they're so overstretched, it's unbelievable. So I'm getting phone calls. I get at least 4 or 5 phone calls every week off the CAMS, off our mental health services. Can I engage with this young person? Because they're so stretched, it's unbelievable. We have a thing in our city, especially, that any young person that doesn't tick a box, we send them to CAMS. We need to reevaluate this. We need to reevaluate the whole service as a whole, because I'm getting young people. I specialise in violence. I don't specialise in mental health. I come across mental health and I work with young people who suffer mental health, and I am a mental health first aider. But we're coming across young people who are violent, who shouldn't be with CAMS. They shouldn't be with any mental health service just yet. We need to deal with them issues first, of the violence, and then, like an onion, we peel the skins off. Then we say, well, then you need mental health services now at this point in your life. But in this city, especially, we're sending young people to mental health service, and we're overstretching our service. And if you talk to a lot of a lot of mental health workers in this city who are full-time mental health workers, it's their job to do it, they'll turn around and say the service is so stretched, it's unbelievable. With young people who shouldn't really be in the service, there should be a couple of other services intervening or intervention before they get to go to CAMS.
So previously you talk about parents. You work also with parents?
With parents, yeah. We, over the last, just before the pandemic hit, we rolled out the biggest parents programme across the city. We engaged with about 300 parents, and we had about another 500 parents ready to take part in the training, in the awareness sessions. So basically that was covering anything from education to severe violence to mental health to housing and finances. So we tried to address about 4 or 5 things that are having the biggest impact on the families that we work with, and having an impact on their mental health and their social well-being. So we had all these services around, and we had the mental health services coming in doing talks with the parents. But again, if a parent requested their service, you were looking up to 12 months, 18 months sometimes for their service to be offered to them because they're that stretched. But more and more I do youth work, the more and more the importance of engaging with the families or the carers, we've got to do it more and more. It's most probably not a resource that we have used much over the years, but over the last couple of years, it's a resource that we massively use and we see the benefits of it.
Do you think that...
Sorry, Maria. Can you mention the topics you work with the parents? You said you work on 4 or 5 topics.
So the first one we look at from a young person's point of view, we look at gang culture. We look at violence, signs and symptoms, what to look for if you think that your son or daughter is involved in that lifestyle. Smells, we teach parents about smells, so we bring drug work boxes in and the parents can smell them and stuff like that. We look for the mood, let them have a look at the mood of the young person. So they're monitoring the young person all the time. One of the big problems we have with that, because most young people who are involved in that gang culture, that sort of lifestyle, are age 12 up to 19. So what we've got to put in there is puberty. So what we're looking at, we're telling parents to look out for these signs and symptoms. We're looking for young people who'll be moody, who won't talk to the parents, who'll scream and shout, very secretive. That's all to do with coming up to puberty and stuff like that as well. So it's a minefield. But then what we offer financial support and guidance. We'll offer housing will come in and do some workshops with them around housing, the rights of that young person. of the family, citizens' advice, do workshops with them. So it's all having a positive impact on the mental health of the parents. Because what we found, if we can deal with the parents and get them to a point where they're very happy and they know that they'll have stresses and strains in their life, but they know we get them coping mechanisms how to deal with it. So if they're happy, if their mental health's really good, 9 times out of 10, the young person's mental health's good. So it's about putting them support mechanism in place for the parents. A lot of kids that we deal with are dealing drugs for a simple reason, because mum and dad have mental health issues or they have disabilities and whatever else, and they can't go to work. So the young person becomes the breadwinner within that family. And when I say that, the young person becomes the person who goes out and financially helps the family. So a lot of young people aren't doing it because of they want to be a criminal. They're doing it because they see mum and dad struggling. So again, that gives them massive strain on their mental health and physical health. So we're putting, by doing the parents' workshops, we're putting a whole circle of multi-partners, agents around this family who are going to offer that support. But, sorry, one of the best things we've seen so far, which we didn't expect from it, was the community supporting each other. That was the biggest thing we've seen from this. We've given people skills, but as we've walked away, people have stood up and took responsibility for their own community, and they've become their own support mechanism within that community. So doing that has relieved the organisations and services of some stress of having to go in there straight away. So we did, what we're looking at is doing some like parent mentors, so getting them qualified so they can be that mentor and that advocate in their community.
And how do you organize the support? Like, is the same youth worker giving the parents training to the young person that is, or you have a team and you divided the task?
9 times out of 10, it's me. So it's it was such an undervalued, and as I said at the start, overstretched service. That's the top and bottom of it. But it's funny because I've built the relationship up, or my team have built the relationship up with the young person. So what the parents don't want is a stranger coming in. So the parents have got that trust with you then. Well, I know that you're doing well with my child, so I will listen to you. And the amount, like I've brought police and everyone at social services and stuff like that into sessions. But the parents, 9 times out of 10 would run a mile. They'd run away from that. But because I've done it, or my team have done it, they accept it and say, well, you know what, you're doing it for the right reasons. So they accept them. They start accepting the help of the police and of social services. Most probably the 2 biggest agencies that people in this country run away from.
Alan, you work with other professionals in collaboration. You are talking about mental health services, and how is working with other agencies, other workers, and how you move as youth workers in cooperation with these other professionals?
One thing we do really well in this city, we call it multi-partner work. So one thing we do really well, we work very closely with lots of different agencies. We can't do the job we're doing, especially within the hospital. I work with a young person. So if a young person attends A&E with an injury or something, it takes a host of different partners that I need to bring in to work with that young person and family. I think we do that better in this country. I think Liverpool does it better than any other city across the country. But absolutely are brilliant. We see the benefit of working as one. Don't get me wrong, there's partners out there who won't engage. They think that they're on their own. And what you'll see is that that's not the best service for that young person. So what I've done with 28 years experience, I've built up a portfolio of partners that we use. Now, I won't pick them because I like them. I'll pick them because they're the best service for that young person or family. So it's getting the knowledge of that organisation that you're going to use and the organisation that you're going to pick to work with that young person. But we do it really well. This job couldn't be done without partners. We need them partners to all come together and all develop a plan. But what we do really well, because of the hospital is so powerful in the city, if people listen to what we say, people take responsibility for their actions, because we can call them out at meetings. I don't mean that in any disrespect to anyone, but we can ask the questions that no one really asks. why haven't you done your job? And you know yourself, if you're not doing the job, it only takes one person in a multi-partner agency to not do that job, and that young person's at risk. So in the hospital, we can ask that question, why aren't you doing your job? So to get brought into line then, and then if a partner doesn't do the job, we won't use them again. We'll put them into the folder not to be used, and we'll bring another partner in. But what we find in the hospital, partners are absolutely made up to be a part of the hospital, because the hospital's got such a great name worldwide. People are made up to come and be part of that. So we don't even have to pick the right partners. The right partners are coming to us and asking us, can they work with us? And so it's been one of the easiest things I've had to set up within the hospital, to be honest with you. It's but our mental health service in the hospital, with Alder Hay, just to rewind a bit, with Alder Hay, till I started working there, Alder Hay were absolutely great at fixing kids. If a kid come in with a broken arm, Alder Hay, the hospital had fixed that arm. If a young person come in with mental health problems, the hospital and the CAMS team would work with that young person for a week, maybe 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. What the hospital wasn't really good at was a young person who'd come in who'd been a victim or a perpetrator of violence. They'd fix them, they'd patch them up, they'd stitch them, they'd put a plaster on, and whatever else. When they sent them out to the hospital, the hospital's job was done. But what we were seeing, and the evidence that we've looked at in the last 2 years proves, what the hospital were doing really was traumatising young people. They were sending them out into the big wide world with no support whatsoever, unless the only time they'd have further support if they had mental health problems and what they'd gone through, and then sent to our CAMS team, our mental health services. But then another. So what they found is that we were creating mental health problems for young people. We were creating I work very closely now with the trauma team in Alder Hay and right across the country on a national basis, the trauma teams, because we've all realised now that, do you know what, if a young person comes in, for example, the worst case scenario, a young person comes in who's been stabbed, when we put them back on the street, when we've stitched them up and put them back on the street, what about the psychological side of being stabbed? What about the trauma of being stabbed? What about the flashbacks and the nightmares of being stabbed? They weren't offered any service. They were just, that you're still alive, go back out in the street. So now we're working very closely with mental health teams within the hospital and the trauma teams, psychologists and people like that, who now are giving these young people at least 6 weeks counselling after they've been stabbed or been a victim of serious violence. They're getting that service. And then what they're seeing is, and the evidence is proven, that they need to be moved on then to further support. Now that may be from a youth worker's point of view, that'll support that young person for the next 6 months, 12 months. I'm working with a young lad at the moment. He's age 13. He was stabbed twice through the chest and twice in the leg. Now, that happened about 5 weeks ago. He hasn't received no counselling or no mental health services have stepped in yet, or psychologists or nothing yet. So I've been mentoring him, and I've been his first aider for him, his mental health first aider. So 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he's been ringing me, he's having flashbacks of the incidents. He starts his therapy next week, his psychology. He starts his psychology sessions next week. Again, it's too late, but it's the best service at the moment we can possibly give him because we're so stretched. It's too late. He needed that service to step in straight away from being discharged from the hospital. So one way, and he was lucky that I've offered him that service. Otherwise, he'd have been on his own. I shouldn't have offered him that service. It's a service that I've gone way above and beyond the service I should be offering, but I know the impact it's going to have on his life long term. But he should have been offered that service the next day, but because our services are so stretched, he couldn't have been.
I'm wondering who helped the helpers, who helped you and your colleague, because you are describing us a very hard work and a very emotional work. So I'm wondering, do you attend the supervision in groups as a singular worker?
No. It's I own a boxing club, so my boxing club is my distress. I go there and I do it. I'm quite fortunate, to be honest with you, and my team are really great. I talk to my team. I take all their stuff, their baggage off them if they need it. But I don't know. I'm one of these people. I'm quite good. I don't suffer with stress or nothing. And a psychologist or somebody might say I do, but I don't. But I deal with it very well. I have people I can talk to. My wife and great, and my kids are great. My kids, one of my daughters, she's a social worker, and she just, I don't even know I'm getting counselled by them. They just get, how are you, Dad, and stuff like that. So I'm doing it, but I'm not in a professional way. But not the hospital, no, they don't offer me no support and stuff like that. They're meant to, but it's the service again, it's not there, it's overstretched. I am funded through the police and the Home Office. They're meant to offer me weekly supervisions. I think I've had one in 2 years. So and I had to ask for that. I witnessed a young person die being stabbed to death. And I knew through, I'd like to say that's the first young person I've seen stabbed to death. It's not brilliant. So I know in my past that this is going to impact me somewhere along the lines, seeing that young person die. So I spoke to them myself about asking, can I just have a one-to-one just so I can get this baggage out and you deal with it then? But they've never checked in with me since. They've never spoke to me since. How are you feeling, Alan? Whatever else. So it's we're very, very slack on that side of it. The service, the whole service in the city is very, for people who are doing the job, which I'd say is a high stress job. The service is terrible. Really is bad to supporting colleagues. It's disgusting, to be honest with you.
When you get the training, you said at some point you decided to be trained as a youth worker. It was mental health a topic of your training, or it's something that you learned through your experience? Through my experience,
mental health, we couldn't put mental health with when I was younger. You never had mental health problems. You got told to man up and grow up, and you didn't have mental health problems. This is why we're most probably in the situation we are now with males and the amount of males that are committing suicide in this city, in this country. It was something, to be honest with you, as I say, 28 years of doing the job. It was most probably something about 8-9 years ago when I met Stacey, who really looked at, me and Stacey were working with a gang of young people, a big group of young people who were very violent, had lots of issues. And I'm always looking for different, how can I work with these? What can I find? And when I brought Stacey in to work with them, and Stacey opened my eyes to stuff. And at the time, I most probably didn't realise it was mental health and stuff like that. It was about 6 years ago, and I've realised, and I've spoke to people about the work Stacey's done. They still speak about the work Stacey's done with the lads and that. And that was most probably the first time professionally mental health was put on the table to me. I'd dealt with it many times before that previously in my career, but officially I got trained about 6 years ago. So to become a mental health first aider, and I've done loads of other training since, and it does seem to form part now massively of all the training that we're offered now, which is good. But yeah, I'd like to say it was 28 years ago we've come across it, but I got told when I was growing, even my youth worker said to me, stop being a wuss, stop being silly, get on with it, man up, you need to do this and whatever else. And it was most probably not the best advice you give me, to be honest with you. But it wasn't. And I'll be honest with you, in this city, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's exploded, mental health. We most probably didn't even look at it before that. There was agencies and organisations looking at it, but right across the youth work spectrum, most probably wasn't, in my experience anyway.
And do you think that a mental health training for youth workers could be helpful?
It's got to be the first training they do. I'm not even saying that because I'm sitting in front of you guys. It's got to be in the first 3 topics of training that a youth worker does. Mental health has got to be one of it. And the reason why, I go back to what I said before, we're taking young people on a journey. As a youth worker, we're telling this young person, you can do this, you can achieve that. Somewhere down the line, it's going to impact their mental health. Now, whether that impact them the mental health positively or negatively, it's impacting the mental health. So as youth workers, we've got to know how to deal with that. We've got to know the signs and symptoms that we're looking for and stuff like that. And you guys will know better than me that we can't always spot mental health. People who have mental health issues cover it really well. And that's one of the big things. I go back to, there was a young person about 4 or 5 years ago who committed suicide. And the youth worker who was dealing with him at the time said the most famous line for anyone who's ever committed suicide: they were all right when I met them. And what's been proven a lot now is that people who are going really serious about killing themselves, they have that period, don't they, where they are fine, because they know their pain's going to come to an end. And it's just stuff like that we need to teach youth workers, and we need to engagement workers and stuff like that. I honestly believe mental health needs to be in the top 3 training things that we do. You do your youth and community, or you do your training around being a youth worker. And then I'd turn around and say mental health has to be second. It has to be, because so many young people now we're facing and we're talking to suffer with mental health one way or the other. And especially now coming out of a national pandemic, everyone, every youth worker, every teacher, anyone who's going to come into contact with young people needs to do at least basic first aid and mental health. I was shocked that our police force, up to about 2 years ago, didn't have anyone, a key worker who was their mental health workers. Now, first aid, police are the first people on the scene. When a person's having a mental health breakdown or something like that, or they're threatening to jump off somewhere or whatever else, 9 times out of 10, the first people on call are the police. And I was really shocked to see Merseyside Police didn't have a specialist in that field. Now they've got and corrected that. They've corrected that. All police officers now have done mental health training in one way or the other. But if you're asking me, yeah, youth workers need to be mental health trained. Oh, that's better.
Alan, in your opinion, what defines a good youth worker? What are the main characteristics to be a good worker, a good youth worker?
Being approachable, definitely being non-judgmental, and don't be scared to challenge. What we're seeing more and more now is our youth workers, the training they're doing our youth workers, most probably isn't the best training that they've ever been given. Our youth workers now aren't trained to challenge. They're not trained to tell a young person no. But don't just say no, tell them the reason why. Tell them why they're not doing it. It's young people, in my experience, the ones I work with anyway, they're not used to having a structure around them. And as a youth worker, one of your greatest skills you've got to use is to very quickly put a structure around a young person. Now, at first, I've seen many young people who fight that structure, but because they're not used to it, they're not used to having a safe environment put around them. What we're finding now, a lot of youth workers are trying to be the friend of the young person. You're not the friend. Don't try and be the friend. You're a youth worker. You can befriend them, but you can't be their friend. It's completely different. It's being able to listen. What we find is a lot of youth workers, even I've done it myself over the years, we think a young person comes to us and starts talking to us. We think we've got to talk. Just sit back and listen. Let them talk until they finish talking. And then they'll let you know when you need to talk. And that's the biggest thing is, we think as adults, we've got to always put our advice on these young people. We've got to say this, this, and this. One of the greatest things I do now is just sit back and talk. I listen to young people, and then in my head I'm working out what I can say next, and I've got the right things to say and whatever else. But empower them, but listen to them and be approachable. It's got you. Don't ever brush a young person off and say, I'll talk to you later. Me personally, if I'm talking to adults and a young person approaches me, it takes a lot of courage for a young person to approach an adult. If they're doing it in the right way, they're not doing it cheeky or whatever else, but it does take a lot of, you know yourselves, it takes a young person a lot of courage to ask for help. So be there for them, give them that time. Definitely one of the biggest things in this youth work is don't treat it as a 9-to-5 job. Don't think that you're ever going to go to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and come home at 5 o'clock in the night, because you're not going to do that when you work with young people. Young people don't operate at our times. Young people operate at really silly times in the day and night. So it's about being flexible as well. There's a load of qualities and skills, your habits, and most probably you don't learn them until you get older, and how you're working out how to do your job and stuff like that. One of the best skills I've got now is being old. People look at me now as having the granddad or their uncle as well and stuff like that. So it's brought a whole newfound respect from young people. They have that trust. I can build trust with a young person now a lot quicker because they see me as that older person. They see me as a granddad figure, and they know I'm going to be all right with them. It's really strange the way I've seen it change.
Do you think that young people understand and perceive the difference between you as a youth worker and other professionals, mental health professionals, social worker?
Definitely they do. I've seen that more and more over the last 2 years within the hospital. So if a young person's been brought into the hospital because of mental health problems, the first person the hospital call is me. Now, they don't really fall under my remit unless it's to do with violence or stuff like that, but I'll go and talk to them because they're a young person. So what I'll do, I'll go in and try and calm the young person down. I'll give that the calming influence to that young person. I'll find out of the young person what's their issues. Hopefully I will anyway, if they're talking to me. I'll find out a lot more of the young person, because the mental health services that come in, they're very straight and they're very cold and calculated, and they've got to be to find out the information straight away. But the hospital now, 9 times out of 10, they call me and say, can I go and have a little talk to that young person? They presented at the hospital with mental health issues. So I'll go in, a lot of time I'll use humour, I'll have a laugh and joke with them. If that's not working, I very quickly realise that's not working, maybe a bit more serious. But I seem to have a greater impact with the young people than the mental health services coming straight in. So it's building that trust up then. And because I've built the trust up, and then I'll introduce them then to the other workers within the hospital who are going to be part of their journey. So again, that trust there straight away. So Alan said it's all right, the trust there, and we'll work with them.
I don't know if our partners want to ask you something.
I have another question. Sorry. I have another question. You know our project mainline, I guess, no, Stacey? What do you expect from us? What are the main results, and in which way our project can help you as a youth worker and other youth workers?
What would you say? I just think, when Stacey asked me to do the talk and talk to you guys, I find it, I'd like to one day ask you questions and spend time with you guys and see what your services are doing and how you're doing it and who you're doing it with. I don't think we've got it all right in our city, in our country. I don't. I think we need to learn off different countries, and we need to spread the knowledge around. This is one of the biggest things. We need to talk to each other. I spoke to a guy a few months ago he was from Cuba. And sorry, I'm just going off the beat. I'm going away from your question. I will come back to your question. And he was telling me about the stuff he's done in Cuba. And he was from a little village. He was a mayor in a village that had the highest death rate for violence in one of the ones in the world. And he was telling me he said, have I ever done a project with toothbrushes? I said, no, why? And he said, well, they were getting up to about 3,000 people a year shot dead and stabbed to death in that village, in that town, where he lived and around it. Toothbrushes took the death rate down to about 150 a year. I said, how'd you do that? I said, it took a long time, took over years. He said, but what we've done, we went into school. He said, in the schools, we got young people to look at the teeth. And he said, we made them very, very protective of the teeth. We made them very proud to smile. They had big white teeth. He said, we supplied every young person with a toothbrush and toothpaste. And for 12 months, 2 years after, we went and changed the toothbrushes and we went and changed the toothpaste. And I was thinking, where's this going? And he said, and then what we were doing, we were telling them about drugs and alcohol. He said, and we were saying drugs rot your teeth. Alcohol rot your teeth. And these young people stopped going into the drug industry and stopped taking drugs and alcohol because they were so proud of their teeth. And I thought it was amazing. And stuff like that, I like talking to other people, and I think we need to share the knowledge. So stuff like that would work in any major city across the world. I think we'd save one young person's life by doing something like that. And I know there's people like you guys. It reassures me to know that there's people right across Europe doing this sort of work. It does. I spent a lot of time in Spain about 15 years ago. Do you know what? I'm showing my age. It was about 25 years ago. we went there and I spent time with Spanish youth workers and Italian youth workers and Greek youth workers and somewhere else, Turkish youth workers. And it was absolutely amazing. We were there for a month and we shared the knowledge. We had young people with us as well, and they were talking about what impacts in their country and what impacts in our country and stuff like that. And it was most probably the greatest bit of youth work I've ever done in my life, because we shared the knowledge. We come back and we tried things they'd done and they tried things we've done. And it was just knowing. And for our young people, it was brilliant, because it was our young people's thought, you know what, it's not just us in our country who like this, people, young people around the world who were like what we are. And it was just sharing that knowledge. But I don't think we share the knowledge enough. I don't think we share each other's experiences enough. And the only way to do that is mixing and doing stuff like this. People who are in the mental health work and deliver mental health or in that industry, I feel so sorry for you. I do. It's such an undervalued, well, it's not undervalued, it's such an overstretched and underfunded industry. I think we need to look at it wholly. And why guys like you, why people like yourselves are meeting on forums like this and talking to each other, we have power in numbers. And with them numbers, we can change things. I can't change things on my own, but I'll go away from here today. And in my trauma meeting this afternoon, well, this morning, sorry, it's going to go on all afternoon. I'll talk to them. I'll talk to them about what I've just done now and I met these people. And I'll share the information about your organisations when I get it off Stacey. And so more people will understand what you guys do around Europe. A few of the doctors in the hospital, they're very curious. The odds are they'll say, any chance that we can speak to Stacey first and then set up so we can have a little talk to. So I may get some of our mental health practitioners who might want to sit on this and talk to you guys who know a lot more about mental health than what I do and how to deal with it and stuff like that.
One last questions I would like to ask you, and before to introduce our works to you, what we do in our countries to share this knowledge, as you said right now. What would you recommend to those who want to become a youth worker today?
Don't do it because it's no money. Don't do it for the money. It's such a rewarding job. It consumes your life. It takes over your life. If you want to be a good youth worker, it consumes your life. It's not something. I don't believe that you can just go into youth work and make it a job. I think somewhere along the line, it's got to be something that you're called into. It's something that you trip over and find. I never ever thought I'd be a youth worker. Never ever. It was no matter even when I was doing my training, even when I got my first job, I was thinking, no, I'm not a youth worker. I can't be. And it's mostly one of the most rewarding jobs you'll ever do. And but don't expect instant reward. I've seen young people 20 years later when I've been walking through the city centre who have said to me, thanks for what you've done and stuff like that. So sometimes with our job, the same as your job, you don't see the rewards of it, you don't see the impact of it. And that could be pretty frustrating. You put all this time and effort into a young person and then they leave you. And they only leave you 9 times out of 10, they only leave you because they're at that point in their life, a good point where they can leave you and get on with their own life. And you don't see that side of it, so unless you bump into them. Yeah, but don't ever get into it for the money. You're not going to get none.
Thank you very much, Alan.
So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for having me on.